off a new piece of paper. Okay. So with serif, we're going to start out the same way. We're going to just print our word lightly. I'm going to print mine dark so that you guys can see it, but you're going to print your word lightly. And big again. Let's see here. We'll do create this time. I'll get a longer word, but that's okay. You guys don't have to pick a word this long. You can't see it. Now you can. Fantastic. Okay, so I've got my word printed. And our step 2 is adding these serifs. So that means I'm going to look for edges of my letters, and anywhere I see an edge or a point sticking out, I'm going to add a tiny little hat. It looks like this. Tiny little hat, tiny little hat. Putting tiny little hats on everything. Corners, points, ends of the lines. If it's sticking out, it can get a tiny hat. So my second step for this one is adding serif. You certainly can if you like to. Yep. Someone didn't ask, hey, can I put a tiny hat on one of these edges? If you think it looks good and it looks fancy, my answer is yes, absolutely. If you put it on there and you're like, oh, that's ugly, you can just erase it. Uh-oh, homework flew away again. There we go. Alright, so once I get all my tiny little hats on, it's going to be kind of like our bubble around, but we're going to rectangle around this time. Okay, so instead of making like this big fluffy bubble that goes around the outside, we're going to make rectangles that go around the outside of all of our letters. Curved letters are kind of weird because you end up with a curved rectangle. I like to get super dramatic with all my serif rectangles. I go way out around them so that I can see my serifs really well. I'm going to end up with a lot more overlap on this one, and that's okay. With our guidelines and then making these rectangle lines, it's easy to get mixed up because you end up with a bunch of lines. So just double check, do I have a rectangle or a box on both sides of my guideline? Sometimes I'll do one side and then I'll forget to do the other side. Getting there. Cool, I'm going to finish up my word. And once you get more comfortable making these rectangle shapes around your letters, you can get kind of, I guess, more like creative or crazy with it. And as long as you're making like angular lines, so that means pointy lines, you're pretty much doing it right. So if your letters get kind of wild, that's a-okay. All right, after I've made my rectangles, what is my next step? Who has a guess? Yeah, erase your guidelines again. You got it. Now some of you, when you're erasing your guideline, suddenly realize I did not make a rectangle on both sides of my letter because I'm erasing part of my letter. That's okay, now's a great time to fix it. So if you missed making a rectangle on the outside of one side of your letter, go ahead and draw that in, and then erase your guideline. Ta-da! Cool. And the cool thing about Serif, or really any graffiti font that you decide to use, is all the steps after this are the same. We're going to add a shadow. We're going to add an outline or a background shape. We're going to add a color. We're going to add texture pattern. The steps are really all the same. Right? Yep. If you did like a zigzaggy outline last time, or a simple shape, that's okay. I would say for this one, try doing something that's a little more complicated. Try doing the one that's like bumpy topped. And then if I want to do drips like they have in the packet here, if you want to do drips, you can pull that drip down and round it back around. Drop down and come back up. Drop down, drop down, drop down. They're kind of just like fancy M's to make those drips. Let's try it. If you don't know that that's okay, but I'd love for you to try it. Well, I look like that. Yeah, drips are like weirder than you would think. They're hard to draw. They are kind of hard to draw. I kind of draw just like loopy ends. I drop down, I make a U at the bottom, I come up and make like an N or an upside down U at the top. Uh-oh, blew it. I look square. If your drips look square, you probably need to round them. Make U's at the bottom and N's at the top. There we go. And then after I've got my outline, I can add a shadow, I can add color, I can add pattern, right? Alright, so for your guys' graffiti practice assignment, it says it in Google Classroom, but I'll just tell you out loud again. You need to have 2 graffiti practices, not the 2 we practiced today, 2 more, 2 new ones.